you so much for the warm welcoming, and it's always a pleasure to do presentations to the supply chain management group. Very excited to share the most recent updates. Our focus today will be on the government funding for manufacturing supply chain industries. We'll cover content across Canada, so no matter where you are from, in Canada, we can I guess touch on your province a little bit and see what funding is there. Just in case if it's not there, let me know during the Q&A session at the end um, about where you are from and if there's something that wasn't properly covered. Because I'm only showing you the tip of the iceberg. There's like hundreds of programs all across the country, some from federal, some from provincial budgets, and it's really hard to show all of them within this limited time. But I try to focus on the major ones for you, and also on a few tips that we share with our clients regarding how to make your application more successful and what are those nuances that you need to take into consideration. Very quickly about fair grant writing. We've been in business for 14 years, and our focus is helping other businesses unlock the government funding and thereby become better, become more productive, and possibly even survive the business environment. We over the years we've done over 12,000 applications, so we really nailed it, and we understand how the government review processes work, what are the priorities, and what sort of language they are looking in the applications. We consistently have over 90% success rate with our applications. But enough talking about us. Let's more talk about you and what possibilities are. So this is the case study of one of our clients in the aerospace and defense industry. It's the basically it's a machine shop that makes parts for aerospace industry, and uh, they were approved for over $8 million in interest-free loans from the government to support their growth and expansion projects. So by showing you this case study, I want you to remember that there isn't any limit when it comes to government funding. However, no matter what government funding you secure, it's always tied up to your project. So the government never actually provides 100% of the cash up front to the businesses. That's not how it works in the government. So before we start, just very briefly wanted to explain the different types of government funding. So the government grants are non-repayable contributions that everybody likes and everybody wants because yes, good thing is that they are non-repayable. Bad thing is that they require upfront applications. So you cannot spend the money, do the project and assume that you will get the grant later. No, that's not how it works for the grants. With grants, you always have to you have to submit the application before you start spending the money. The government loan is the other opportunity, and yes, the governments, both federal and provincial, in many cases in Canada, provide those interest-free loans. However, usually they provide them for large-scale expansion projects, and they are not accessible to most small to medium-sized businesses. They're really reserved for large-scale players that can create massive number of new jobs, for example. Tax credits, this is the other type of government funding, and unlike grants, tax credits work retroactively. The name is a bit confusing, but the fact is that the tax credits rarely have to deal with your taxes. In fact, even if you don't pay any taxes, you might still qualify for the tax credits. And the way the tax credits work is that you apply for those tax credits at the end of your fiscal year, retroactively, once you spend the money and once your fiscal year is ended. We'll cover those and some examples of each of them later during the presentation. So I'm pretty sure it will be much more clear to you. And the last thing before diving into the particular government grant programs, unlike actually, despite the public opinion, the government does not helicopter the money. It's the myth that they do that. They allocate the money for the specific purposes. So if your company, just exists and does its business, it doesn't automatically qualify for the government grants, or is not entitled to any of the government funding. You have to have certain projects and certain activities in order to qualify. So, for example, you need to buy equipment, or you need to train your employees, or you need to do R&D, or maybe hire or expand. But anyway, so that's the case. These are the cases when the government uh, could approve a grant for you, if of course if you properly apply for the grant. And also the government does not provide any operational funding. That means they expect you as a business to be able to pay for your wages, for your utilities, materials and supplies, etc. As I mentioned before, they also do not pay 100% of the project budget for the for-profit companies. Only non-profit companies can count on 100% reimbursement or even upfront money. But when it comes to government funding for-profit sector, it's never going to be 100%. Or I mean, it rarely. I should say rarely. Sometimes it happens, but in very, very rare occasions. So let's start with the first category of the grants, the eligible projects in the skills training. Governments across Canada prioritize skills training and as the way to sustain economic growth and also ensure long-term employment of the employees, of the basically taxpayers. The good example of the skills training grant in Ontario is the Ontario Job Grant. It was recently relaunched, actually after a break, but the rules didn't change much. You need at least one employee on payroll who is not the owner of the company. And if you want to train that employee, or actually more than one employees, if you want to do any third-party training for them, then you can apply for this grant. And depending on the size of the company, you can get between 2/3 and 5/6 of the training costs, up to $10,000 per training. Now, only if you are about to hire an unemployed individual and you pay for their third-party training, in this case, you can get 100% of the training costs reimbursed. But this is rather exception than the rule. Now, there is a similar program. Actually, there are similar programs elsewhere in Canada in all other provinces. For example, Canada Alberta Productivity Grant is for companies located in Alberta. It's 50% of the training costs if you are if you are upgrading the skills of existing employee, and 75% of the training costs if you basically create a job and hire an unemployed individual. But other than that, the rules are pretty much similar all across the country. There's a similar program again in British Columbia. It's called differently. It's called BC Employer Training Grant. But the point is the same, 80% of the training costs up to $10,000 per trainee. In some provinces, there are limits as to how many employees you can train a year, or how much funding in total you can get a year. So those are provincial nuances. But also the other thing I wanted to mention about this training grants and skills training grants is that they are open to all industries. You don't have to be, say, manufacturer, or food processor, or farmer, or let's say distribution company. It could be any business, any type of business, any type of industry, and also any size of the company. As long as you have one employee who is not the owner, you're good. As well as the age of the company. So these training grants are among the few grants that actually work for startups, because most grants require you to be in business for at least 1 or sometimes 2 or more years. The training grants are perfectly fine for startups. So in case if there are any startups in the audience, like, this is what you can take advantage of. Now let's talk about the other priority for the government, and it's export business development. Of course, with recent US trade disputes, there's a lot of push from pretty much all levels of government onto export diversification. Can Export SMEs is the federal grant that covers export marketing costs. That means if you are a Canadian corporation located anywhere in the country, it doesn't really matter what your province is, as long as you have at least 3 full-time employees and as long as your revenues exceed 300,000, you can apply for this grant, and you can get it to market your business at the trade shows, do customer visits, bring your materials, bring your booth, etc. So those are more, traditional hard costs, but those costs are pretty high usually because even attending a reasonable, like high-profile business conference is a couple of $1,000s just to attend it, plus airfare, plus accommodation, etc. So all of those expenses can be partially reimbursed through the program, and the program pays 50% of the costs up to $50,000. This program has a deadline, and it's currently August 31st. Also, sharing our experience working with this program lately, a lot of focus is now on markets outside the United States. You can still use the program and apply for marketing in the States, but they allocated way more budget for marketing in other countries as opposed to marketing in the United States. So take that into consideration if you're looking into this program. If you have other potential export markets on your agenda, then this program is certainly great. And the timing is great because right now the federal government focuses on export and diversification. One example that I can share with you regarding an export program is our game studio client. It's also to demonstrate that can export program is open to every industry, including services, including software, obviously manufacturing, because it's direct exports. But also what we found applicable is what's called exportable services industry. For example, if you are an engineering firm or architectural firm, you may have foreign clients, and although you don't export any goods directly, you export your services by selling your services to the clients in other countries. And so if you are in this type of business, again, any consulting, most of the service businesses without physical location, you can use this program and promote your business to your foreign clients. Now, the other priority for the government is research and development, and there are two major programs that are available in Canada. Again, those are federal programs, so anywhere in Canada. Those programs, by the way, have been around for over 20 years, sometimes more. So most of you on the call probably at least have heard from them. So one is the Industrial Research Assistance Program, or IRAP, and the other one is Scientific Research and Experimental Development Tax Credit, which is actually the first example of a tax credit that we are going through during this webinar. So Industrial Research Assistance Program is a grant, so you have to apply with a certain scope of your R&D project, wait for the approval, and then execute your project. The great thing about IRAP is that in this case, the government reimburses on a monthly basis, which is excellent for your cash flow. The downside is that the demand on the IRAP funding is very high, so that the National Research Council, the organization that administrates the program, they introduced a vetting procedure. So you cannot really go ahead and apply for the program just by filling out the online application form. You have to first talk to the advisor who works for National Research Council, and the advisor has to literally give you the blessing to apply for the program, and then only you can do that. Still, it's not a guarantee, even though you get this blessing. It's not a guarantee that you'll get the funding, but at least this is the procedure, and this is what you need to know before you apply for the Industrial Research Assistance Program. Now, SHRED, or Scientific Research and Experimental Development Tax Credit, works in an opposite fashion. You don't have to pre-apply. You have to apply at the end of the fiscal year when you perform the research and development work. Now, of course, you don't have to complete the R&D work at any given fiscal year. You can complete it next year and submit another claim, but at least you have to, or not that you have to, but you have an option to apply for the research and development tax credit in order to get the reimbursement of the expenses, R&D expenses that you already incurred. And in both cases, they cover labor, materials, and subcontractor expenses. The tax credit was recently upgraded. It also covers a portion of the equipment involved in the R&D, but those are kind of the major expenses. The only one advice I could give you is that don't use both programs for the same R&D project, because when you apply for the tax credit, you have to deduct the reimbursement of IRA from your eligible costs. So it doesn't really make sense. So either one or the other. Now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the software, hardware, and artificial intelligence. This is certainly, especially AI, was on the government radar for quite a few months. There's a whole AI strategy that was released recently. However, I should say that there is not that many AI adoption or AI-related grants available as of now, but that's normal for the government. So they first come up with the strategy, they name certain programs in the strategy, and then they take time to actually formalize them and create application procedures, allocate staff for review, etc. So I would say closer to the fall, we should expect more AI grants available. But still, I'm going to share with you everything that's available right now that you can apply for this funding. If you are in Ontario and if you are SME with under 500 employees, you can apply for the Digital Modernization and Adoption Program. This is the program for you to select the right technology to later implement in your organization. So it's not for implementation. There are other programs for implementation, but the reason why they introduced it in Ontario and in other provinces is that when you work with a qualified expert in system selection, the likelihood of the success of implementation increases. And that's the only reason why they do that. Some of you may remember Canada Digital Adoption Program that is now shut down, but it's pretty much same story, right? Same idea. You work with a consultant, qualified IT consultant, to select the system, and the government reimburses you, X% of the costs. In this case, it's 50%, up to $15,000. In some other provinces, this is different. In Quebec, for example, there's also a similar program called ESSOR Volet 2. Any company located in Quebec that has been in business for over 1 year could do pretty much the same. They could work with a qualified IT consultant to select the system, but Quebec also has a program for implementation of the system. And again, this could be software, could be hardware, could be AI. Obviously, ERP systems were probably the most expensive projects that we have seen. And initially, many of those programs were designed to support large-scale ERP implementations. But you're not just limited to ERP. It could be any system, whether it's manufacturing system, design software, simulation software, etc. In British Columbia, there's a similar program called Technology Assessment Program, very straightforward. It includes not only technology selection and assessment, but also productivity assessment. It is managed by the Canadian manufacturers and exporters, and it's also a nice exception from the rule that it covers 100% of the assessment costs. So basically, as a BC manufacturer, you get this assessment free of charge. So CME has the budget for this, and they do it themselves, so you don't have to pay anything out of pocket. And now I'm going to share with you the most recent update. So literally 5 days ago, they launched a new program, a similar idea, but very focused on industrial artificial intelligence. You work with a qualified AI consultant this time, and there's a limited number of those consultants available for you. Uh, it's obviously only for manufacturers. The idea is like similar here. You work with someone to assess your readiness and then create an AI implementation plan and roadmap. And then later on, not now, but hopefully later on, there will be a funding where you can actually apply for the AI implementation. But not right now, it's only the readiness assessment and implementation plan. It's 50% up to $15,000. So it's a very new program. The only one thing I don't like about this program is that it requires a reference letter from the National Research Council. And it's the same organization that manages Industrial Research Systems program. It just takes time to get this letter. It takes time to get the advisor from the National Research Council to talk to you, get to know you better, etc. Unless you already have established relationship. If you do, then that's great. All you need to do is just give them a call and ask for the letter. But if you have never had a relationship with the National Research Council before, be patient. It's going to take some time for you to establish those relationships. Now let's also talk about the other priority for the government is the tariff response. So I don't need to explain what's going on with the continued trade disputes that we have with the United States and China. If you are impacted by the tariff disputes, and currently the focus is on steel, automotive, and softwood industries, but there could be more. You could also be impacted if you are outside of those industries. You could access this funding. It's a national funding, so you can be anywhere in Canada. However, the purpose of this funding is not to really compensate what you've lost to tariffs. It's to incentivize you to invest in extra capacity, diversify, maybe move away from your current industry, or at least gain capabilities to service other industries and thereby compensate for the loss due to tariff disputes. So this program covers things like facilities expansion, purchasing equipment, labor, and expertise associated with this expansion and diversification projects. The good thing about this program is that it pretty much about 75% of the expenses. It's not a grant, but it's an interest-free loan with a postponement of principal repayment. So the terms are still very, very beneficial. And also the government doesn't require any collateral or security. That's another good thing about the government. So if you're impacted by tariffs, certainly consider applying for the Regional Tariff Response Initiative. In Ontario, also, I wanted to highlight the Ontario Trade Together Fund, a similar idea. Just don't mix up those two. It's either one or the other. Ontario Trade Together Fund is for the most impacted Ontario companies. Again, same idea, 75% of eligible expenses. It could be a combination of a grant and a loan. And again, same idea, facilities and equipment, expansion, one-time labor, material, or expertise costs associated with the project that ultimately diversifies your business. One of the good examples of our clients that actually applied for the Ontario Trade Together Fund is a steel products manufacturer, very known company involved in fabrication of steel appliances. They secured over $1 million in government grant from the Ontario Trade Together Fund. Their problem was that part of their production was in Asia, and they urgently needed to move the production back to Canada. And this program basically allows them to do that, to basically replicate uh, their manufacturing facility in Asia, right in Ontario. Now let's talk about some other tax credits that you can use, and the focus will be on manufacturers. The provincial governments have also local incentives for expanding manufacture. So if you are in manufacturing business and if you buy a building or if you do significant upgrades in your building, and if you buy production equipment, you may qualify for one of these local tax credits. In Ontario, for example, you may qualify for 15% reimbursement of all your eligible expenses, up to $3 million if per fiscal year. Normally, with tax credits, you get a cash refund. However, if you owe something to CRA, you get the difference between the amount of tax credits and what you owe. There's a similar program available in British Columbia, and it's actually brand new, so they only launched it this fiscal year. Similar idea, if you are manufacturing, either buying or significantly renovating the property or purchasing equipment, then you also qualify for 15% of eligible expenses up to $2 million. And again, it's per fiscal year basis, so as long as you spend the money for equipment or building upgrades every year, you can claim 15% of those costs every year. Other provinces have similar programs. Specifically, I wanted to highlight Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Quebec. If you are expanding your facilities there, buying equipment, then you qualify for the similar tax credits. In Alberta, though, you have to be in the agri-food sector to qualify. So other industries don't qualify, unfortunately. But again, the government funding never stops. It always changes. And not only at the beginning of the fiscal years, but during the government fiscal years, there are typically lots of announcements, changes of the rules, etc. So if your province is not there here, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that your provincial government hasn't come up with the same program yet, or that it's still work in progress. But if you are in one of those provinces and if you are a manufacturer, then certainly you qualify and you are incentivized to grow, buy more equipment, or expand or innovate your property. I also wanted to highlight two federal tax credit programs, Clean Technology Investment and Clean Technology Manufacturing tax credits. The difference is that the Clean Technology Investment tax credit is for any business that buys clean tech equipment, and clean tech equipment includes things like solar panels, like pretty much any clean energy generation equipment. It also includes small modular nuclear reactors, which is quite interesting. In case somebody wants to buy one, there is an incentive for that. And clean technology manufacturing is for manufacturers making that stuff. If they are expanding, if they buy more equipment to make this clean technology, they can claim significant cash refund on the equipment that they purchase to make the clean tech equipment. Now, I wanted to also talk to you about the federal regional development funding opportunities. So typically, when we talk about those regional opportunities, we talk about the government loans. So the federal government distributes the funding directly, and it has programs that it funds directly. But it also, in every region of the country, has what's called the regional economic development agencies. And sometimes it's one agency per province, like in Quebec and British Columbia, or sometimes it's one agency that covers all three provinces or more, like in Atlantic Canada and Prairies, for example, in the north as well. Ontario happens to have two economic development agencies, one in the north, one in the south, but they work very similarly. They provide like local expertise and determination in funding decisions. You only usually talk to them when you have a large scale expansion project, so at least $2 million in the budget. Otherwise, they wouldn't be even talking. Well, they will be talking to you, but they would be they will not encourage you for applications. But if you bring or at least $2 million in expansion funding, an expansion budget with your project, then they will be certainly willing not only to talk to you but also to contribute. And the contribution is typically 50%, but sometimes it's 35, sometimes it's 25, again, depending on the province and depending on your project. And this funding is typically an interest-free loan. Loans sometimes exceptions, but typically it's interest-free repayable funding. Now, there isn't any maximum limit to what this federal development programs can contribute to your project. If you are looking under 10 million, then you are going through what's called business scale-up and productivity stream. If you're looking for over 10 million, then you go through the strategic response fund stream. And by the way, strategic response fund just opened the limited call for proposals from the food processing sector. So if you are in the food processing sector, you now have a dedicated funding pool. But you have to keep in mind that this is the massive funding, requires massive investment over at least 20 million to qualify for 10 million. So you have to make sure that you have enough budget to start talking to the government about this project. And just a couple of other items before we go for a Q&A. In Ontario, just today, on June 30th, there are 3 programs that opened up. So those programs are available for businesses located in Ontario outside of the major urban areas, like outside of the GTA. So if that's the case, you may qualify for, again, funding to buy equipment, to expand, to bring more business and create more jobs in Ontario. And then depending on where you are in the province, you go with one or the other program. One of the clients actually for the Western Ontario Development Fund was in the food packaging industry, and they secured over $2 million in interest-free loan with $500,000 forgivable portion. And that's how this regional programs work in Ontario. Typically, they are interest-free loans with a forgivable portion. And a couple of things before we go to Q&A again to help you increase chances for success. First of all, before you apply, you have to understand the assessment criteria very well and know exactly what the government is looking for, because in some cases, the main thing that the government is looking for is job creation, but in many cases it doesn't matter as well. So you have to know what the focus of the government for the specific programs that you apply for. You also respect the rules of the program. Make sure that you qualify, make sure that your project qualifies, make sure that you apply before the deadline. Nowadays, of course, with the digital application, they won't even let you apply after the deadline, but sometimes things happen. Remember also about the stacking limit. So stacking limit refers to combining different government funding programs for the same project. There are limits to that, so make sure you don't exceed them. Otherwise, you'll have to repay some of the government grant money, and you don't want that. Also respect the reporting criteria and guidelines, and also the timelines for reporting. In many cases, you can only get the money actually into your bank account after you properly submit the claims or reports to the government. So knowing the schedule for those submissions is very, very critical. They're not too complicated to submit, but you have to make sure you submit them on time. And last but not least, a couple of reasons for you to act now rather than later is, first of all, the government funding is not an unlimited pot of money. It seems like it's unlimited, but in fact, every program has a limited budget. And if you're late in the game, or if it takes you like many months to come up with a government grant application, then you may miss the opportunity. You're not the only one applying for the government funding. There is competition. Obviously, the funding is not guaranteed, but we still encourage you to take your chances. What we also found is that although it's not like a rule that's written in stone, uh, that the first come first serve get get better chances, better results, better approval rates. But if the program has a deadline and you apply at the end, like just before the deadline, then guess what happens? Suddenly the reviewers of the grant get enormous amount of work to do, so many applications. But if you apply early, they are available to actually read your application thoroughly and make the decisions based on based on the information you provided, as opposed to at the end when they will be just skimming through the application, trying to understand the nature of it, but without giving it the due attention. And in many cases, the last but not least is that you cannot spend the money for the project until it's approved, unless it's a tax credit. In the tax credit cases, you can spend the money before you apply, but in case of the government grants and loans, you can't. So that's why you don't want to delay the government funding application, but rather you wanted to apply as early as possible. And now I would like to open the floor for Q&A. Feel free to either type your question in the chat or unmute yourself. Um, I will share the presentation with this useful resources. It has a free eligibility check on our website and also a brand new chatbot that can also help you identify the government funding as you speak to the chatbot, as you share more details about your business. Yeah, try those tools, see how it works. When we receive your submission, we typically get back to you in a couple of days, and we'll let you know what specific government funding programs you may qualify for. The chatbot though does it instantly, so if you don't have the patience of a couple of days, then go ahead and try the chatbot. And on that note, I will stop sharing my screen and open up the floor for the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Igor. I hope you don't mind. I'm just gonna make
Absolutely.
a comment. Excellent slides, by the way. But one of the questions I had, or concerns, I guess, was on the slide of maximize chances for success, success. You indicated about the stacking limits, but the actual slide just says stacking. So I would just recommend if you could adjust that slide to say stacking limits, because I think that's an important clarification. And thank you for that, because I'm sure it probably does apply for lots of people, or potentially could. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. Thanks for coming.
Do we have any other questions? Well, you can always type in the chat. So Igor, often if there's a program in Ontario, most likely there's a matching program in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia, right? Okay, and we have noticed like the jobs grants and all that. There's definitely one in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, federally funded but run by the provincial government. Is that correct?
Well, it depends. And actually, I would say it doesn't really matter where the money comes from. Rather, what matters is the qualification, because yeah, some of the programs they are federal, some provincial, some are jointly funded. Like for example, BC Training Grant or the Ontario Job Grant. So these are jointly funded programs, even though they may be run by the provincial governments.
Okay, great.
Also, if we have anyone from the food sector, food and beverage sector on the call, including food processing, farming, I recommend looking into Canadian Agricultural Partnership. In fact, this is not the one program; it's the whole umbrella of programs that is only focused on farming and food processing. So, if you're in those sectors, check out those programs in your provinces, and I'm pretty sure you'll find a lot of great programs to support your business and expansion.
Okay. And did any of the COVID grants actually survive and then are extended during this period as well?
No, not really. So
Mostly
most of them
closed?
actually closed in like 2022, 2023. So yeah,
Hmm.
as soon as pandemic was over, they shut them down too.
Okay, and I noticed some of the programs are retro back a couple years. So
Yes.
if they were actually eligible, they could go back several years in funding.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And usually the reason for this is is that the government is slow to act.
Hmm.
So, for instance, one of the programs that is in my mind is the Ontario Manufacturing Tax Credit. It was announced in 2023. I think it's spring 2023, but the application form was only developed a year and a half later. So you couldn't really apply for the grant without the application form.
That way.
Sometimes things happen.
Okay. Any questions from the group? Oh, here we go. David's got one. Is there any fundings for startups? I'm an employee with a side hustle importing goods from Indonesia.
Mhm. In general, for startups, there aren't funding. There aren't any funding, unfortunately, because for the government considers startups as like a high risk environment for for funding. Because unfortunately, the rate of closing rate or the failure rate of startups is quite high. The government is accountable for the money that they are spending. That's why in many cases, unfortunately, they uh, don't allow startups to apply. Depending on the provinces, though, you may qualify for local startup incentives. I know there are, if I'm not mistaken, uh, if I'm not mistaken, in Saskatchewan there is a startup program. It's not like a whole lot of money, but still, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 for you to get started to do your online advertising campaign or something like that. Ontario also has something that's called Starter Company Plus. Um, so yeah, we'll have to look at the provinces separately, but something like that should be available in the province where you are. Again, not a whole lot of money, but still reasonable funding to help you get started.
And there's also a group called Startup Canada too, which might be something
Mhm.
to check out, David, because they're actually on LinkedIn. You could possibly check them out and check their website out. So it's called Startup Canada.
Mhm.
Any other questions, guys?
Well, looks like everything's clear.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can always follow up
Yeah,
with
yeah. I
Igor
would,
by email.
for sure, for sure.
We'll be posting this the recording on YouTube, so follow us on YouTube. But it'll be posted, and then as Igor explained in the presentation, there are a lot of contacts for you to reach out
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Fair Grant Writing
And one
and go through it.
and one thing that I just wanted to add, we didn't focus a lot on this during the presentation, but the defense is also now a huge priority for the federal and, of course, most provincial governments as well. Um, so if you are in any fashion related to the defense sector, or if you have products or services that you think you can sell to the defense sector, um, stay stay informed. Look at the recent announcements of the defense funding programs, because chances are that you may take advantage of one of those programs, and there are R&D procurement programs, for example. Like if you are developing technology that could be relevant for the defense or dual use, there are many challenges, government challenges, government post challenges that you can apply for, and they will fund your R&D. Uh, if you are an established manufacturer, you wanted to diversify into the defense sector, you can apply for the funding to, again, acquire equipment or certification that you need in order to become the defense supplier. So that part of the economy is now also pretty much booming. So keep an eye on the defense funding as well.
Okay, we have one more comment and question.
Mhm.
Sorry, I came a bit late. Do you have any suggestions for nonprofits?
Uh, we do, but it's kind of outside of the scope of this webinar, unfortunately. But yeah, you can connect with me offline. And then depending on what type of nonprofit it is, where it is located, and what exactly its focus is, I can give you some ideas. We traditionally focused on for-profit at Fair grant writing, and again, that's why this webinar was also focused on for-profits. But yeah, reach out to me separately, and I'll try to either connect you with the right people, or maybe answer some of your questions.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? So again, you'll have access to the recording, most likely within the next day or so. We'll send out an email, and then as well, you can always reach out to Igor as follow-up, and connect with him. Definitely follow him on LinkedIn. He is on LinkedIn, and he does a lot of postings. As well, Igor has a newsletter that goes out on a regular basis. So sign up for the newsletter and become well informed on different programs that are out there. Well, Igor, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Those of you in Ontario, you may find that the Toronto chapter actually holds sessions with Igor as well. So if you get that opportunity, definitely check out the Toronto chapter. Thanks everybody for attending. We'll close off, and we will definitely follow up with you over the next day or so. Thanks again, everyone.